If salvation become an issue of a mere belief, which we call it orthodoxy, which is simply a belief in something rather than doing something or action, then everyone says...
If you've gone to theological school, that's the difference between orthodoxy and orthopraxy.
Praxis, yes. Yeah,
Two words that don't really exist in the general conversation of the general public.
Yeah, I mean, primarily reserved within a theological kind of
but
field.
Orthodoxy is the ideas, orthopraxy is the deeds.
The action, yes.
But it's a system of beliefs or actions or whatever.
If you separate action from belief and you restrict faith purely in a belief, that you simply believe in Muhammad or Jesus or somebody else, and that's enough for your salvation, and God is with you and you have already reached heaven and you don't need to do anything, then the hypocrites and everybody else, they all claim that yes, we are saved because we believe, we don't need to do anything. So we have, when we see this contradiction or the challenges between action and deed, I mean deed and faith, or this is...
Well, between orthodoxy
and orthopraxy, you have to understand that there are many reasons that feed into this. Is that
some of it's cultural programming.
Some of it is deliberate misinterpretation. Some of it, I mean, various other reasons are involved that what we have, whether it's Christian society or any other society.
Sometimes people just don't know any better.
Well, this is, I mean, in this day and age...
one would hope not.
Yes, in this day and age.
It occasions the remark, what rock have you been living under?
Yeah. I don't think, I find it very difficult for somebody to claim, well, I didn't know, or we didn't know. With information being available around the corner, various faith centers, people talk about it, and it is everywhere. So the idea that somebody claims they didn't know unless they've been living, I don't know, in an isolated place far from civilization.
Well, even not that isolated. When I lived in New York City, there were lots of people who knew nothing beyond 10 blocks from their apartment. It's as if their perception of the world became so small that they remain naive and ignorant about everything outside of it.
Yeah.
The town I grew up in was in southern Wisconsin, and towns are 20 miles apart. Chicago was 3 hours away. It wasn't that isolated, but the public discussion was so limited in terms of what we talked about that it was aggravating when a friend moved from Chicago to my town and couldn't find people who recognized who George, Paul, John, and Ringo were. And it's like, well, our local paper doesn't print any national news. I mean, you had to subscribe to the Wisconsin State Journal if you were going to find out any of that, because it was never talked about there.
Yeah, I mean, then it becomes personal responsibility for people to really make an extra effort to learn about things, and that's something that we need to discuss. Why is it that in some societies people are really happy with ignorance?
Yeah, or content to let their worlds remain small.
Yeah, I mean, is this justifiable or excusable or not? That's a different story.
Especially as we're moving into an age of global community. But we're getting a little off the subject. It seems almost impossible to find someone of any faith. I'm not focusing on the individual. To find any faith in which there is not a strong element of hypocrisy somewhere within the followers.
That goes without saying. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's the fact that faith or scriptures are texts that revealed from, if we accept that there is such a thing as revelation from the divine, and then given to individuals and left to humans to implement. At the end of the day, the text is left at the mercy of people. These are your path, these are your guidelines, and this is your blueprint for this ideal society that brings if you were to follow it, it brings harmony. But because there is no compulsion, at the end of the day is left to humans to follow, given free choice, people tend Few individuals, minority people will tend to organize their life accordingly and choose that path. In most cases, with good intention right at the beginning, these are, call it the disciple, the founding fathers of a particular faith, that they really were truthful to the text, but gradually even the text gets corrupted. The message of the text gets corrupted, the messenger gets corrupted, etc., etc. So we are left at the mercy of how we interpret these texts. And
I got an email from a Lutheran minister once who, if I remember his statement correctly, it was that the movement is always from mysticism to bureaucracy. And the first time I heard that, I just said, "What? How, what a horrible suggestion!" And yet, it as I thought about it, it seems true that you have a person who has a mystical experience, other people who become witnesses to that and want to replicate the experience, and the whole thing gradually becomes systematized and written out almost like a recipe for baking a cake. And as more and more people wish they could have the same experience as the original mystic did, creating this system designed to replicate an experience, which of course it can't replicate.
well, there is another way of, putting this statement, that every faith claims at the moment of its inception to have come to liberate. There is a liberative component or major component of that faith or scripture, is to liberate group of people who have been oppressed, marginalized, etc., etc.
Okay.
From liberation to dogma.
Okay.
That's the process where...
Which dogma to me is always a problem.
Exactly. So what happens, those liberation components that came to liberate the marginalized, the poor, the needy, etc., those who were thrown out by the established order, is gradually moved out, and now the text, the scripture, the message, everything else that was supposed to be liberating is interpreted in a way that it becomes dogmatic and rigid.
And enslaving.
Not practically so. Historically, if we look at, say, the three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we see that Moses came to liberate the Israelite, create the Exodus, move, and then it became dogmatic and rigid. Then Christianity came to liberate again that dogma and create a new environment, a new space for those who were marginalized. It by itself, as it went through history, it became dogmatic. Islam came to liberate that issue right from the beginning, and now interpretation of Islam has become dogmatic.